Hi, everybody. On behalf of Rypple, I'd like to welcome everyone to the latest webinar in our Rypple Leadership Series. When we built Rypple, we built it for managers to make it a lot easier for them to do things that great managers have always done, things like recognizing people for good work, sharing key priorities, running fast feedback loops, and coaching people to achieve their goals. And for our leadership series, we're always looking for great managers to come on and share their best practices. And our guest today, Michael Lopp, is one of the best. When most of us think of software developers, we think more of people more comfortable hanging out with zeros and ones than they are with other people. I work with a team at Rypple of bright, engaging developers, so I can say this stereotype doesn't hold, at least in most cases. But Michael has done more than anyone I know to dismantle this stereotype. He's a former senior engineering manager at Apple, and he now works on special projects for Palantir Technologies. But he's probably best known for his highly entertaining and informative blog, Rands and Repose, and also his books, Managing Humans and Being Geek. And as he writes in Managing Humans, he recognized early on that the techniques that you employ to manage bits of information seldom work when it comes to managing people. And so on Rands and Repose, he's been writing since the mid-1990s with an unnatural degree of humor and insight about management, which, as we all know, is a treacherous subject area that in less capable hands can quickly veer toward useless platitudes and well-worn bromides. When Michael writes about his definition of a great manager, it's incredibly simple and yet very profound. He writes, just see the people who work with you. Every single person with whom you work has a vastly different set of needs, and it's your full-time job to listen to these people and mentally document how they are built. This is your most important job. And so with that very profound insight, I'd now like to turn things over to Michael to talk to you today and share his insights about how to be a great manager and how to keep your best people from quitting. So, Michael, we're really pleased and excited to have you with us today.
Thank you, Nick. And hello, everybody. This is sort of strange. My normal presenting mode is standing up, hopefully, in front of you, wandering around and waving my hand. So I'm sitting here in my cave with a headset on, and it's sort of weird not being able to see you guys in the eyes and see what you're reacting to. So we're going to kind of keep it conversational. I'd like to thank Rypple for hosting me. If you guys haven't checked out Rypple, if you like what I write about, the thing that is really interesting about Rypple is they are big on something that I'm big on, which is feedback constantly in any form that you can get it. As we're going to talk about today, I am a big fan of taking care of people, and when you look at what Rypple can do for you, it's about getting information around your people cross-pollinating. Enough PR. I can't hear you guys laugh either. That's really strange. Anyway, hi. You're there, Nick, right?
I'm here, yes. And I can hear you loud and clear, so go ahead and enjoy.
Okay. So this was the pitch for this was an article I wrote a long time ago, which is What to Do With Your Screw. But I recently wrote a piece that really seemed to resonate with people, which was this article called Bored People Quit, which is the most common thing you can say about things, but it really resonated with folks. Just to give you guys who maybe don't know a little bit about me, I'm the guy on Twitter that sounds like a fortune cookie. But the reason you should perhaps listen to me is for a lot of the stuff that I've done. I'm not going to be quoting any sort of Harvard Business Review. There's no studies. There's no charts and graphs. There's nothing in here which is anything other than what I've been experiencing over the last decade and a half of working in the Silicon Valley. So I started at Netscape early on at Netscape. I then worked at a startup that you've never heard of. I spent a good portion of the 90s, of about 8.5 years, working at Apple. I was running part of the Mac OS X team, and then I ran the online store team before I came over to Palantir, where I work under this bizarrely weird title of special projects. Palantir is relevant here because it kind of goes into what I'm doing at Palantir is relevant to this conversation because what they asked me to do sort of was they said, hey, we're building this company. Palantir is a startup. We're a bunch of people now. We're growing fast. And they said, hey, you're Rands. You said all these things. Put up or shut up. And so my job at Palantir doesn't really have a title. If someone asks, I say I'm the CTO, and they go, oh, you're the Chief Technology Officer. And I say, no, I'm the Chief Therapy Officer. I talk to people all day. It's mostly engineers at Palantir, and my job is the care and feeding of them and making them awesome. So how the hell do I do that? All right, I got to click stuff. Here we go. So another basic thing for you know about me is I believe in just making people awesome. Platitudes. So my job is, I just kind of see this as I was putting together my slides. You need to know something about what I do and what I believe. There's this cycle that I believe that exists with any team, which is you hire bright people, and these bright people do this amazing thing. They build a culture, which is hopefully a reflection of their brightness and their awesomeness. And then the cool, virtuous part is that culture and those bright people, it just attracts more bright people. This is my business plan. You don't see anything on here about dollars, products, strategy, design, or anything like that. And I think that's my first point to you is like, if you think that you're doing this alone, you're absolutely wrong. There's other people. My job is the health of the entire team. There's people out there that are awesome that are doing design. There's people out there that are doing amazing technology. But the idea is how those folks are going to all get along. There's another thing here that I believe, which is people are kind of a mess. This is a wonderful thing. People are chaotic, lovely snowflakes. But at the end of the day, being a nerd that I am, I'm faced with this issue of having to deal with these chaotic snowflakes. And it's hard because nerds, as we all know, are like traditionally very liking hiding out in their caves and not dealing with human beings because humans are these big messes. So the question is, how do we define a strategy to kind of actually deal with all of these chaotic, wonderful snowflakes? And that's a lot of what I write about. And we're going to kind of talk about, I guess, two strategies today. And then we're going to talk to Q&A because I want to get to Q&A so they actually know you guys are there. Here we go, slide number 8. So the first thought I want to start with you is that people sort of go off the rails in the most quiet ways. Things that start as little annoyances turn into big, huge disasters. And as a leader, you're going to have a whole set of disasters. There's actually 12, which we're not going to talk about right now. But there's these set of disasters which, when you're an engineer or a nerd or I think this applies to any profession, you're going to encounter these disasters, firing someone, putting someone on a performance plan, sexual harassment. There's this whole list, 12 of them, that are really, really going to put you on the opposite side of what your other side of your comfort zone. And the thing is these disasters are interesting and they're entertaining and it's a fire drill because it's like, oh my God, I have to fix this disaster. But my first question to you is, how do you get ahead of that disaster? And the thing is, as I've looked at disasters happen to me, whether it's firing someone, whether it's someone bright leaving, I can usually go back and I can see the root cause. And more often than not, it's something really, really small that I missed because I was busy and I was in a hurry. People lose their way quietly. What do we do about that? My favorite tool. It is such an easy thing to do. It's actually not really easy, but it's such a simple thing. You have a one-on-one. What is this HR douchery that I'm talking about? What is this touchy-feely stuff I have to go do? It is not necessarily the natural state for the nerds and the geeks and the tech set to be good at this, but I think this is a great way on a consistent basis to sit down with your folks and to see root causes for things that could turn into eventual disasters. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure of a one-on-one, and then I want to talk a little bit about how some of those what I expect out of them, and then sort of what some of there's basically 3 versions of them in my head, and kind of talk about how to deal with each one of them. So there's anybody who's familiar with my stuff knows I have an obsessive compulsive thing with the number 3. So almost all things are listed as 3. And I can see you guys on Twitter, by the way, so I'm seeing things as if I. Anyway, which is comforting. So structure of the one-on-ones. Really quickly, every week, no matter what, 30 minutes at least, let's talk about each one of these things. Every week, you've got a lot of things to do. You're busy. Wherever you are, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you're doing, and sitting down and spending some time with your team each week can seem like it's less important. And another thought I want to leave with you is like, okay, that's okay. You're really busy. You put it off. That is a great place to ignore something that can turn into something larger than that. Every week, consistency. This is your important. To me, this is the most important thing that you do is your people. If your people are not there, your job is exactly nothing. You have nothing that you're doing. They are your responsibility. Getting it into consistency is one good step. The other thing is commitment. There's no matter what. Every week, the same time each week. At Apple, both of my first boss was really good. The one-on-one was its sacred time, right? It didn't move every week. It was the same amount of time every week. It was Monday as part of getting the week started, and I trusted it. It was like 4.5 years. It never moved once unless I was on vacation or he was on vacation. And I knew that was the time that I could actually run something up the flagpole. We could have a discussion about something large, right? I knew that time was there. 70% of the time, it was lightweight, something we just kind of ripped through things. But 30% of the time, there was something that it was either I brought in that was huge or a potential disaster, or it was something that something that we discovered as part of the conversation. And 30 minutes at least. If the question here is, well, sorry, Rands, Lopp, whatever your name is, I've got 25 direct reports. How could I possibly do that? So your problem isn't one-on-ones. Your problem is that you have too many direct reports. You're actually not managing those people. There's in my head, there's basically 2 sort of ratios for leaders to employees, or whatever the right words are for there. There's the Google model, and there's the Apple model, which I consider kind of be the HP model. The Apple and the HP model is basically 7 direct reports plus or minus 3. Now, I'm sure there's a Harvard Business Review study that says this is a good thing, but at the end of the day, what it is that you have enough time every week to focus on your people, as well as projects, technology, whatever it is that you're doing. The other model is the Google model. And the Google model is, ripping on Google here a little bit, they have a lot of teams where it's like 30 or 40 direct reports. And my question to you is, how are those people growing? Where are they getting mentors? I'm sure they probably matrix some sort of mentorship problem, something on top of that. But at the end of the day, they don't necessarily have a person who is directly responsible for their growth, for caring about them, for seeking out those early disasters. 30 minutes. Here's the other thing. I'm a complete toddler when it comes to transition, meaning that if I'm doing something and you come in and try to pull me out of my zone, I'm like cranky. Because I'm a nerd, and I know that all of the context that I'm building on what I'm doing is very important. If you come in, all I'm thinking about is that I'm going to lose all the context, I'm going to have to go rebuild it. And the 30 minutes for me is you can have a conversation in 15 minutes, but for me, the first 15 minutes is how you doing? It's context switching into this very important thing that you're about to invest your time in. And if you do it 10 minutes, if you do it 15 minutes, you can probably find stuff, but you're not actually giving your full attention, especially the nerd and geek set, because we take a while to actually go there. And by the way, we're bad at it right out of the gate too, because we're nerds. All right, next slide. There are 3 basic kind of types of one-on-ones in my head, and this is basically Susan. She's walking in, and this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what Susan is going to do when she brings her stuff into her wonderful snowflakiness into my office as we sit down. And there's three of them. There's an update, there's an event, and there's a disaster. And let's talk about each, and they give you a little idea of what I really expect out of a one-on-one. An update is hopefully just what's going on, getting through the data. Now, there's a fine line between a status update and what I consider to be the update in a one-on-one. A one-on-one is not a status report. Stuff that comes up that's going on with you on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever, is okay to get going on here. But my gut is you probably have a slew of meetings that are actually getting status going on. And this is not that meeting. A good one-on-one to me is a good conversation about what's going on. When I start with folks, when I start landing one-on-ones and forcing this on them, they think that they want status. Hi, Rands, this is going on. We got 27 bugs in Jira. Performance is down. And that's the last thing that I want to do there. What I want to do is I want to have a big, fat conversation. So when I sit down and start one-on-ones with folks, there's actually 3 points here. One of them is hidden. But the first thing I have whenever I go into someone is I have a little notebook, field notes notebook, and I write down, these are the 3 things I want to talk about with this person. It takes a minute and a half, and we'll talk about what should be that 3 things in a little bit. It takes like 30 seconds to be like, okay, Susan, all right, so she's been here 2 years. How's that going? She doesn't like Bob at all. Bob's pissing her off. And some other random point. Who knows what it is? And I have those there. And when Susan walks in and she says, hey, Rands, 27 bugs in Jira, performance isn't working, I'm like, what's going on with this thing? You've been here 2 years. Tell me about that. The point is I'm going to pull us out of a status update. I'm going to make this a conversation. We're going to talk about something big. Okay, so I forgot to do the 3 points. And she comes in, and she's going to go say, hey, yeah, 27 tickets in Jira, performance. Like, the other thing I can do is let's make it a performance review. People love this. A performance review? What are you talking about? This is just a one-on-one. Well, hopefully, if you're managing and leading your folks well, you have a little bit of idea where they want to be. So let's step back. Let's step way back and say, like, hey, Susan, you want to be a lead, right? How's that going, right? These are the 3 things I know you want out of your career right now. So let's talk about that. And, okay, so I don't want to do performance review. I don't want to do pre-prepared points. There's a 3rd point on here, which is let's talk about my current disaster. Let's go strategic, right? I've got something that's blowing up on my plate right now. And as a leader, you probably know this. There's always something on your plate that's making it a fire drill. So whether Susan has anything to do with this at all, let's have her engage in it. All right. Hey, Susan, did you know that John wants to quit? He's been here 3 years, and he's bored. So what are we going to do about that? Bring her in. The whole point of a one-on-one to me is moving from the tactical day-to-day of everything that we have to do into something strategic, something where we have thinking time, and people love this. All right. So that's the update. Let's talk about the vent. Let's not pick on Susan anymore. Let's pick on Eric. So the vent starts out a little different. Now, usually this is a good sign. Here's why I like the vent. The reason I like the vent is because it means they trust me. They're coming in, and they've got a head full of steam about something, and they just want to talk about it. Here are the rules about the vent. There's 3 things I'm thinking. 3, told you, they're everywhere. There's 3 things I'm thinking about a vent. First off, is it a vent, a rant, or a disaster? Let's talk about each one. So vent is just, hey, I need you to listen about this thing. I don't know what this thing is, right? Eric is coming in, and he's pissed off about the food in the kitchen, let's say. And it's not a rational conversation. It's just him blowing off the steam, right? And that's all you have to do. There's a thing as a leader that you want to turn it into an action item and fix it. In the vent, your job is not to fix it. Your job is to sit down and listen, take the steam, and let it all go. Now, that's great. There's this moment where you realize that they're done with their vent, and you can take it into like a discussion about, well, that sucks, and let's talk about this, and why do you want the food to be so good, or whatever. But there's a couple other versions of the vent that you have to be looking for. And I have to take a sip of coffee here. The vent that is actually a rant. Now, what is a rant? Sounds like exactly the same thing. So what I think of a rant is the following. Eric comes in, says the food sucks, talks about it for 3 minutes, and then he says it again, and then he says it again. Now, we talked about it 3 times, so that's a rant to my head. It's like they do not understand. They just want to sit there in that steam let-off mode, and they like it, right? And at that point, you have to jump in and say, like, okay, you said it 6 times now. I get it. The food is bad. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something. It's a tricky thing between the vent and the rant, right? Because you want to blow off the steam because that's your job, but you don't. There's a point where maybe it took 3 times to blow off the steam for them to actually get there. So it's a bit of an art there, as it is with all wonderful chaotic snowflakes. The third version of this is the disaster. The vent that is picking up steam, new content's arriving, and it's about to explode, which gets us to the disaster one-on-one. I don't know what this is. There's 12, by the way. Someone's going to ask what they are. I'm going to have to write an article about that. But there's 12, and I'm not sure which one it is. It could be they just say, well, and I quit, right? And you can see it coming, but they didn't come in to quit. They came in with a vent, it escalated higher, it escalated higher, and suddenly they're like, it's some sort of disaster. We should fire this guy. I don't like this person. The food's really bad, and now I want to quit. Very rational error. The thing about the disaster is there's 3 steps. There's 3 things to remember when this happens. And I don't know what it is. Let me tell you, you'll know it when it's there. It's an explosion of a social event of magnitude. I'm missing a word on the bottom. It's we have meat. So first off, about the disaster. When someone is in this mental state, you say nothing. It is still vent-like. You need to let them talk. But the difference between the vent and the disaster in my head is this person has magically, like, there's these graphs that I'm not going to put in this, that where they jump to, like, the person that they are not. They are unrecognizable to you. And you need to remember that. Whatever your magical moves for managing this person are probably not going to work in this situation because it has hit the fan, and they are just not themselves. Here's the other thing. There's a third point on here, which is the issue doesn't matter, is what the word is that's missing right now. The issue around this, whatever the issue is, I don't know. You probably had these before. It's like, oh, my God, I am now sweating in a meeting. How did that happen? It's an emotional situation, and your job is not to fix. Your job is not to do anything except diffuse, right? And actually, your job is actually bigger than that. Your job is to wonder, how in the world did we get here? What have I not done in the past 3 months that has Eric in my office threatening to quit because the kitchen food is bad? Who knows? You don't know. Whenever I see a disaster, I go into root cause analysis. I start going like, how did this happen, right? If I'm meeting with everyone once a week, 30 minutes, how could I possibly have not heard the situation which led up to this? How did I get there? And we can talk about that in the second half of this. The thing I want to leave you with regarding one-on-ones is the thing when I'm sitting there cranky about someone coming in and breaking me out of my flow, even though it's on my calendar and I know that they're coming, is the game is this. This is the game that I'm playing with myself. As I'm sitting there cranky that someone came in, I assume that you have something they're going to teach me. We're going to use this 30 minutes to find something which is interesting strategic debate about something that we're building, about something that's going on, where we get to sit there and talk about it, and we get to think about it. We spend a lot of the day doing stuff. We don't spend a lot of the day actually thinking. So, awkward segue. Here we go. So one of the thing that I want to kind of think about, and this really is something that's relative to one-on-ones, is there's an idea that I have, which people are, and this goes back to assuming they have something to teach you, people are happier when they're learning, and that's why I turn one-on-ones into something which is a learning experience for me. The thing that was relevant to this last article that I wrote recently was about boredom and detecting that early on. The reason you want to find boredom early on is because it's one of those seeds that grows, right? Someone who is bored, who says something and raises their hand and says that they're bored, and it's not addressed, quickly, they don't actually, nothing explodes. They just go, I guess I'm bored, right? But then it grows, and it turns into, well, I'm really bored, and now I'm pissed that someone's doing anything about it. And then it gets roots and turns into this tree where it's suddenly like, I'm bored, this company blows, and I don't believe it anymore, right? And if you go look at that little growth pattern there, what was an easily fixable, hey, I'm bored, that turned into this bizarre tree of bitterness, is what's really easy to fix if you actually saw the leading indicators. And that's one of the things you can do in one-on-one. But I want to talk a little bit about boredom because I think this is a root cause for a lot of people getting cranky and leaving. So, 3 bullets here, because the third one is hiding. The thing that I'm looking for with regard to boredom are 3 things. First off is any change in routine. People are wonderful snowflakes, chaotic snowflakes, but they do have patterns. And anytime I see any sort of deviation from a pattern when I've got to know someone where I'm like, what's going on there? I go deep. Figure out what's going on. Hey, happy? Everything going good? How's the marriage? Why are you leaving early? Why are you arriving late? What's going on here? Let's start talking about this sort of thing. Who knows what the actual root cause is? Could be they're having a kid. Who knows what's going on there? But when I see changes in routine, I want to understand root cause. Maybe it's not boredom. Could be anything. Another thing I do is you ask them. You say, hey, you bored? Right? Dumb question, but it's actually interesting, the question I get sometimes. Someone who's really, engaged in what they're doing, and they're flying along, and we're having our one-on-one. Hey, Susan, how's it going? You bored? She says, yep. I'm like, what? I had no idea, right? She just has a great face when she's doing her work. But inside, she's like, this I've done 10 times. I don't want to do it anymore. It's a great question to sort of sprinkle around your team. And the third bullet point, which is actually hearing that they're bored. People are not, if you ask and they say they're bored, hooray. But people are not going to send around and say, hey, I'm bored, give me something else to do. They're going to say something quiet. They're going to say something innocuous. They're going to say, I was working on this thing again and saw this problem again. And you're listening to them going, okay, they saw this thing and there's this problem, and you didn't hear the agains. What the agains were saying were, I'm bored, right? There's lots of ways that people are going to innocuously say this sort of thing, and you want to nip it in the bud because it turns into a nasty tree. So 2 things for dealing with boredom. This next slide is probably an entire talk, so we're going to have to just go super quickly. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about someone on your team, and I want you to think of 2 questions. Can you tell me this person, call him Bob. For Bob, do you know where Bob wants to go? And do you know how you are currently getting them there? For everybody that I am responsible for, whenever I can't answer both of these questions, I figure out why. I have the conversation. Hey, I know we said in the annual review you want to build a lead. Is that what you want to do? Because you're not acting like a lead right now. Or I ask, what is the thing that I've done to this person in the last week or 2 that has created opportunity for them, that has somehow nudged them in a small or a big way to getting them there? Everybody on your team, every single person on your team, whether they've been there a month or whether they've been there 10 years, you've got to be able to go and answer these basic questions about them. By the way, they are going to notice that you know these things because they'll see you doing the nudges, the big things, the little things about pushing them in that direction to that thing they want to go do. This is a whole thing about annual reviews and monthly reviews and one-on-ones. There's a lot to say about this because I think annual reviews are pretty busted right now. It's a once-a-year time to actually have these strategic conversations. It should be happening as part of one-on-ones. But I think there's another process to actually do that. Particularly Rypple, we had a chat a long time ago, I think is working well in this space as well. Okay, handling button board and level 2. So you have the 2 bullet points. The next thing you want to be able to do with folks, and this is maybe there's a nerd bent to this list, is I've got a list of 6 things that I'm always thinking about every person that I'm responsible for. People, especially nerds and geeks, want to have an interesting problem sitting squarely in front of them. And if they don't, they get bored. Now, we'll talk about crap work, bullet point number here. They can't always be working on this thing, but on that list of things you want to know about the team is, for Bob, what is the thing that he likes to do that when you talk about it with him, his eyes light up? It's an easy thing to tell. They go, boom, and they start talking fast. And they get up, and they're standing at the whiteboard, and they're scribbling. You're like, oh, my gosh, I had no idea. That's number 1. Does everybody on the team, everyone I know that I'm responsible for, have an interesting problem sitting on their plate? Number 2, experiments. Do they have? Maybe they don't have something interesting. Well, this is kind of a version of an interesting problem. Are you giving them protected time where they can actually go and do something that they've chosen to do by themselves? Autonomy, mastery, purpose, Dan Pink, hooray. This is what we're talking about here, is we're giving them the autonomy to actually go and do their own thing, right? Go experiment with something. I'm pretty sure, I say pretty strongly in the article, but I'm pretty sure that if I said to anybody on my team, hey, here's a week, go do something cool, they're going to probably have something in their mind that they could start on right now. Now, this leads us to our next point. So hooray, Lopp's going to go and take the entire engineering team and put them on a week of doing stuff, whatever they want to do. What happens with the product, customer support, blah, 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 and all this time? You've got to obviously plan for this, but if this is something that you're going to do, this is something that you really, really have to protect as well. Time taken away from experiments is never forgiven. Now, it can't be their full-time job, or if it is, that's good too, but sometimes it's not their full-time job, but you cannot, this is not the sort of thing you can say, hey, I want you to go do this experiment for a week, and 2 days in because of the disaster, you have to pull them in. It happens sometimes, obviously, but you have to, in that case, you got to say, I'm going to let you go back and do this in a week. But you got to be protective of this experimental time. You got to understand at the end, when you're done with it, they may not be able to hold up anything and say, listen, I built this for the business. They may not be able to hold up anything tangible. The only thing that you did, which is actually a really big deal, is you gave them time to kind of control their destiny. People love that. I love that. Okay, regarding craft work. So here's the deal. In a team of people, there's work that sucks, right? And there's people that you get assigned this work, hopefully not forever, because people will leave when the work sucks. Everyone has to do it. And that's okay. That's part of working in a team of people, kind of rotate through folks. But we rotate through folks. And there's people that go into the crap work thing and they say, I'm going to take one for the team. I'm going to go do this thing. It's awful work. It's boring work. I'm going to go do it. And then you're so happy that the crap work is getting done and Susan's doing such a good job at it. And when you ask her how's it going, she's going, oh, I did it again, that you don't pull her out. And this is a great way to accelerate boredom. There's people that think they're taking one for the team is the right thing to do, so they won't raise their hand and say, please help. Crap work needs to be well-defined. This is how long you can be there. This is your exit criteria. This is how long it's going to be, right? If you're going to leave people in crap work, they're going to leave. This is the promise. And if they're there, have a very, very well-defined contract. This is how long we're going to have you here, right? And this is what's going to happen afterwards. Anyway, you set that contract, you follow up on it. Number 5. Aggressively remove tactical noise. Again, I'm thinking of nerds here. This goes back to protecting their time, which is if you're going to say, hey, go do this interesting problem, hey, I'm going to go let you do this experiment, Your job as a manager, one of your jobs as a manager or leader, is BS umbrella, if you will, right? Your job is to let them go and do that. Interviews, phone screens, little quick meetings. I swear this won't take a long time. All of these things, you think they're a 15-minute sort of like thing, actually have a much larger context switching costs, especially for the nerd and geek set. You want to do everything you can to let this experimental, interesting problem time be time where they really do feel like they can get stuff done. And lastly, tell them what the hell's going on, right? This is the contract I was just talking about, right? I understand that you're working on this interesting problem. It's clear to me that you're doing this experiment. You're doing it for 2 weeks. This is great. This is what's next. I have to tell you that there is crap work coming this summer. You're going to be doing it for a month. Is that cool? Great. You've opted in. It's only a month. This is what's going to happen when we're done. Giving them context, telling them what the heck is going on is a great way to keep people from getting bored. Here is the win condition for all of this wonderful one-on-ones and boredom detection. Confusingly, you're hitting it out of the park when nothing's going down, which is sort of interesting to me, right? When you get these things, when you nip these things in the bud, you don't have the disasters happening to you, which is kind of strange, because you kind of want some sort of validation, like, well, I've been doing one-on-ones for a year and no one's quit. Like, that's right. That's what you did, right? It's the success here, the success of a happy team is this lack of drama, which is silence, right? Now, it's never this case, by the way, but that's the thing that you're doing is you can't predict all of the things you're doing this that you're actually nipping in the bud. So, further reading. If this has tempted your palate, I'm talking a lot more than I expected. There's 2 books I've written, Managing Humans, which is really focused on the managers. It's for engineering managers, but I've been told that it applies to really any sort of management. There's a lot of swearing in it. I apologize. But it's a really good way to see if any of this is sort of resonating with you, then it's a great way to kind of get a feeling for what my management philosophy is, if you want to call it a philosophy. I haven't had time to actually describe a philosophy because I'm working. Anyway, the other book is Being Geek, which is more focused on the individual, and it's sort of a handbook for nerds and geeks who are really in the kind of the first 3 years of the gig and kind of figuring out what I want to go do next. I'm also working on a new book called tentatively called Cultural Engineering. We'll see how that all works out. If you want to read, I'm Rands and Repose. That's where a lot of this stuff first shows up. If you're interested in fortune cookie platitudes, you can follow me on Twitter. And with that, thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer some questions or see what else happens.
Great. Well, this is Nick again from Rypple. I just wanted to say thank you to Michael. We're going to get to questions in a second. I just want to let everybody know that that the next webinar coming up, Jody will have a tough act to follow, but Jody Glickman, author of Great on the Job, who's kind of one of the really exciting young voices out there on how to manage and work with millennials, so-called Gen Y, will be coming up next in mid-September, and we'll send out all the details then. And we're going to go to questions. In looking through the questions, Michael, a lot of them have to do with structuring one-on-ones. One of the things that we've done in building Rypple as a social platform for getting and giving different kinds of feedback at work is to create a shared space between a manager and employee where they can communicate in a social way virtually, so that when they do have their one-on-ones, they can be as efficient and as effective as possible. But I think a lot of the questions have to do with sort of how you organize your one-on-ones, and and sort of how you prepare for them, so that when you do come in, what are you looking for from the people on your team to have ready to go when you sit down with them?
There's not a, well, first off, let me tell you something that I do, which I think is sort of intersects with the Rypple thing, which is the thing I don't like about annual reviews is that you forget 70% of what happened that year. The idea that you can actually do an annual review and have it be meaningful, there's a time bias, there's a proximity bias, which is the last 3 months is actually what matters, and they did stuff all year. So the first thing that I do is that I keep track. I write down everything. I tell this to everybody that I talk to. I write down everything, and I keep a track of all the folks that work for me so that I kind of have an idea of how it's going. So that's number one, is I have a running context of everything that's going on. What I expect out of my folks that come into the one-on-ones is I expect them to sort of, what I like to see out of the people that I have one-on-ones is they come in with two or three big questions. Not like little tiny questions, but things that are like, hey, let's go ahead and have a debate about this sort of thing. There's usual statusy things that need to happen there, but what I'd like to see is that they're, first off, that they trust me enough, that they know that this is a safe place where we can go and have a big discussion about something that matters to them. I want them to bring content in. And by the way, but as I said, if they don't, I have lots of things because I keep track of a lot of stuff that I will take it. But over time, I want to see it be a balance. I usually have an agenda too, right? But I'd like it to be a balance of their agenda and my agenda. I said 30 minutes, but I like to do 45. Here's why. 45 is longer than 30 minutes, but it's also less than an hour. When I do 45, for whatever reason, it just feels like enough time to kind of get in the zone. And the beautiful thing is I got a built-in buffer, which is another 15 minutes. So I know when we're really cranking on whatever we're talking about, whatever questions they're bringing in, whatever questions I have, we can fill the time. So that's how I'd like to see it end up, but it doesn't usually start that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Now, another listener had asked whether it matters when during the week you should have these beginning, middle, or end.
Yeah. I like there's this whole communication cadence thing that I do with the team, and it kind of depends on, for engineering, for engineers, it sort of depends on what the cycle, sort of the heartbeat of the product is. So macOS 10 was year-plus development cycles. The store was 6-month cycles. Palantir is a lot shorter than that. So you kind of want to figure out what the cadence of the team is and kind of build around that. I usually like to get all of the disasters happening on Monday. So I really gear up everyone. I try to push, when I'm running a product team, I try to push everything earlier in the week so we know what we're dealing with. And so that's when I try to do all the one-on-ones. It doesn't always work out that well, especially with larger teams, but that sort of sets the tempo of, like, what are we thinking about this week? We're ready to go.
That's great. That's very helpful. Another question that came in is to do with managing younger folks, people new to the workforce. The question says, we're seeing more recent grads who tell us things like, you, the boss, will have no right to ask me to get work done by a certain time. I guess part one of that question is, how do you avoid hiring people like that? And then part two is, if you do have people like that who happen to work for you, how do you manage them? Right.
So I've been meaning to do the research into Gen Y and millennials and all of this stuff, because I think there's all those theories that, they were supported by their parents, blah, blah, blah. There's all this interesting psychological stuff. But here's the deal. When you and I were, getting our first job, we were those people. We were the people that had figured it all out, and this is the way it was going to be. So I don't see it as being a generational thing. I just think it's being, a young punk, because I was a young punk, by the way, and I did that sort of thing. So it's not really a generation thing. It's just that's where people are coming out of college with that, and I was that way too. And it's not I'm calling them young punks. These are very bright folks, but there needs to be, and it needs to be part of the culture. There's a lot of Palantir is this way, Facebook is this way, Quora, I'm assuming, is this way, where we're really kind of not reinventing management or leadership, but we're just kind of all the same stuff is happening, but we're putting it on the same level as all the individuals, which I think is a really, really important idea, right? Is to have the leaders be on the same pay grades and everything as the managers. What is the difference between these two folks? Well, one of those folks actually codes, and the other one talks about coding, right? So I think there's a perception thing you can do there, which is if your new hires coming in and saying, boss man, I can't tell you what to do. I would say it's not actually that person, because everyone coming out of college is like that. It's more that your culture has this sort of maybe bureaucracy, or you have a management-focused culture, which you need managers, you need leaders, but I think it's more of a cultural issue than an issue with that individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think that organizations definitely have had to adapt to a new way of doing things, and some of the younger organizations you described are, because they're younger and don't have that old kind of DNA built up, maybe it's easier for them to adapt more quickly.
Right.
I wanted to throw in a question from someone on our dev team. They're very big fans of yours, and they were just wondering how you manage your time, given that you are managing all these people, serving as a chief therapist, and at the same time doing all this great writing as well. Do you have any strategies that you can pass along?
Yeah, I do. There's this article I wrote called Trickle Theory, which describes this a little bit. The thing is, I do a lot of stuff. I talk with a lot of people. I write books. I do talks and stuff like that. How in the world do you time slice it? It's really a really, 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 really simple answer, which is I do a little bit every day. When I'm finishing a book, I've got word counts every day. I find a little bit of time to get a thing. Let's just pick on the book here, right? Every day I have time, not necessarily at the exact same time, but every day I try to get 200-300 words done, which isn't a lot. But the thing about this is the whole trickle theory thing is like you do that, you do that 50 times. That's like 7 chapters. That's like 8 chapters, right? This is a nerd trait, which is like we really want to sit down and focus and do this big thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a book. It's like, no, you're going to not ever write a book and when sit down. You got to kind of just reduce it down and kind of make it smaller pieces. I do a to-do list. I have a to-do list. I'm maniacal about it. I use things. But that's more just things I don't want to forget. The kind of management of my time is just having time to do the things I love each day. I know it's a simple answer, but it's like that's how books get written. That's how big things get done, is just sort of iterative improvement. Iterative and accomplishment.
Well, you make it sound easy.
Well, doing it is actually the hard part. You'll hear this on all the startups. It's an execution game, right? It's not that I've actually written; it's that I've actually written for the last 45 days straight, right? So, and there's days where I get a sentence done, and there's days that I get 500 words done, but I do it every single day, right? And it gets me in that zone, into that pattern of actually getting stuff done. Right.
There are a bunch of questions that have come in from listeners about boredom. One of them that's kind of interesting is what about infectious boredom? In my experience, once someone in your team is bored and venting, it can be demotivating to the team as a whole. Is this an issue that you would tackle in a one-on-one, or is it something that you would try and address with a whole team?
Drama, boredom circles. Yes, I would. Well, depends on the situation. A lot of these questions about people, the answer is it depends. If it's something where someone is basically kind of stoking the boredom flames, you got to find the ringleader, and you got to deal with him or her, right? And deal with that sounds so ominous. You got to talk with them, right? Because they're the one who actually is like planting all of these seeds, right? So the other folks who have been joining in, they are also in my head at risk, right? Because they're not listening unless they think the ideas are interesting. But if it really is sort of, there's a ringleader there, it's someone you can actually go talk with and kind of like get into the one-on-one, find out what the root cause is. Why are they bored, right? Because as soon as they stop talking, they're going to stop planting those very tricky seeds.
Right. Now, there are quite a few people wrote questions dealing with you had talked earlier about this idea that there's an ideal ratio of manager to employees, but obviously not every organization has the benefit of having that. So what do you do within, how do you kind of apply this both within companies where managers may have more than 7 to 10 reports and also just small companies, 20, 30-person companies where maybe the management structure is a lot more fluid?
Yeah, so there's times where you're going to have 15 reports, you're going to have 20 reports. This is sort of a fact of business right now. I think the important thing, if you want to kind of prioritize my one-on-one ideals, the important is to have it consistently, if not, and have it be a conversation of size, as opposed to obsessing about it, doing it every single week. So I have a certain set of folks where I meet them monthly, right? Because I haven't talked with a lot of folks right now, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in the month, so you miss some context, but it's still so much better than just doing the 50-minute phone-it-in thing every 45 days. So I think I would say if you have a lot of folks, you're trying to get it all done, is to get into a consistent period and have it be time which is more than the 5-minute thing. I've worked with companies before where it's like they've got a huge amount of direct reports and they're doing 15 minutes every month. And it's like, that's nothing. That's actually less than that. You're actually hurting your culture by doing that, because all they're saying as they're wandering around is, I got my 15 minutes where nothing's going to happen, because we're not even going to remember what we talked about last time. And, oh, by the way, you started 5 minutes late. So I think period, as well as having some actual time to do that. You can scale it up to larger teams. But again, there is a cultural problem there, which is especially, and I get it, in small companies it can be a little more dynamic, but in the big companies, when people have a lot of directs, that's going to be hard to sort of do care and feeding of your people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We at Rypple, we hear a lot from people, especially from managers. Well, I don't have time to meet with my people on a regular basis, and we always kind of say, well, you're a manager, isn't that kind of your job? If you're not meeting with your people, then what exactly are you doing? And I think one question I had for you is sort of how do you create a culture where that kind of more frequent feedback is is an important and valued part of the culture, that it's not just seen as as a watchword. It's an actual, it's a thing that the company embraces as being crucial to their success.
So you don't write a wiki page and say one-on-ones. The CEO doesn't send out a mail and say, we need to do one-on-ones. Nothing like that will work. You will piss off the young punks who came and called and say, hey, this is dumb. This is not the only way. Stephen, I exaggerate sometimes. I think the way to do this is to lead by example. Someone needs to kind of set the tone and say, listen, maybe it does start with 3 leaders, manager types, saying, okay, we need to kind of do this, but they just start doing it, right? They set the culture by having the one-on-ones consistently with folks, right? And here's the thing. Them doing it isn't actually the thing that's going to actually infect the rest of the organization. It's the people where the one-on-ones are occurring that is actually going to do it. It's word of mouth, right? It's like, oh, I sat down. Patrick works for me, let's say. Hi, Patrick. We start having a one-on-one, and he realized it's a valuable thing. And if I'm doing my job, he should over time. And he leaves, and he goes over into these little boredom drama circles, and he's going like, hey, I just had a really good one-on-one with Lopp. That's kind of cool. When they go, why? It's like, well, we were talking about what I was going to do with my career or blah, 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 or something of value, whatever he valued, and he's starting to talking about it. And suddenly you define this moment with your lead, your manager, whatever they're called, that is actually, folks are going, I see value in that. That's how one-on-ones get infected. It's actually a couple of folks, key folks, doing them and doing them well. Mandates to do one-on-ones are great ways to propagate the myth that, what the heck is managers doing? Well, I have one-on-one. They have to be something valuable, and the folks on the receiving end of them, it's a receiving thing, but the folks that are the employees have to be going like, I'm seeing value in this. That's what's going to create a nice cycle of goodness there.
And on that point, what expectations do you have for your direct reports when they come into a one-on-one? What do you want them, when you talk about sort of the value of thinking, what do you want them to have thought about before they sit down with you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it totally varies depending on the person. So I kind of have a plan of action of every person, and there's a whole bunch of them. But it depends is the answer to your question, which is there's a person that is like, hey, I need to figure out how to reorg my team. So that's a lot of our discussion. We should be talking about that. There's a person that is brand new that I'm doing a whole lot of guiding and getting them into the state of where they can start bringing in stuff, asking questions, knowing this is thinking time. But, I mean, it really, and this is the wonderful chaotic snowflake thing again, it really is that you're kind of adapting the one-on-one to what that person needs, where they are in their career, what they're concerned about, what their level of boredom is, that sort of thing. So it depends, depending on, I mean, my one-on-ones, I have a lot of them every week, and they are all a different flavor. So, but the thing, I guess, to answer your question a little more specifically is, whatever we're working on, whatever that might be, I thought about it when the past week or the last time we met. So my expectation is they have as well, and we're making progress on whatever that thing is. If we're going over and we're repeating, like, hey, yeah, you're bored, I'm failing because I'm not pushing us forward, and they're failing because they're not pushing us forward either.
Right. Another kind of more developer-specific question that I wanted to ask you has to do with the idea of, developers are maybe your direct reports or somebody's direct reports, and they're getting orders or directions from one person, but then other stakeholders in the company maybe are coming to them at the same time separately, making requests and of their time or trying to get their attention. How do you kind of act as a referee in those circumstances?
So the question is, other people are making requests of my team's time, right? Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly. How do you sort of help them manage their time and also manage expectations? Yeah,
it's in the Google style model. That's really it's a trickier one because you have the lead or manager, whatever they're called, doesn't have as much day-to-day with the person. So you're kind of putting a little more of the responsibility on the person to kind of manage their own time. So the answer is it depends, again. But I can see it in two cases. I can see the case where it's like a 7 plus or minus 3, and the case where I have 30 direct reports. Let's pick on the 30 direct reports because that's probably more the case where I don't have necessarily a good contract with my person because there's 30 of them. I would be advising them to I guess I need more specifics on the scenario. Right? Is it something they should be doing? Is it a situation where they're just asking a favor? I mean, I guess the question is, I would be talking with them about how they need to prioritize this, right? Is this just like, hey, someone just needs to do this for me, or is this like mission critical, drop everything and go and do it, right? So a discussion about prioritization is probably something I would have, something with that person. It's kind of hard to answer that question without specifics, though.
Okay. Well,
whoever asked that.
We're sort of at an hour.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about. I know that we have more questions. We could keep talking, but we should probably wrap this up shortly. So I just wanted to say, is there anything else that you wanted to leave people with, kind of a central message or thought as they're logging off?
I'll repeat the title. Bored people quit. That's what they do, and they're gone, and you could have done something about it. So do something about it.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to talk with us today. I'm sure everyone has found it as valuable and useful as I have, and we really appreciate it. And we will be for those people who registered. We're going to be sharing a recording of this as well as the slides, and we'll also be coming out with a kind of a brief recap and a transcript as well in the next little while. So this won't be stuff that just disappears into the ether. You'll be able to hold on to it and hopefully use it productively in your next one-on-one. So thank you, everybody who attended. We appreciate it.
Thank you. That was great.